Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bureau's Town Hall to inform upcoming regulatory packages. I'm Debbie Cochran, Chief of the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education. Thank you for joining us, and thank you in advance for your participation and feedback. I want to be clear at the start of this meeting what this meeting is and isn't. The process of promulgating regulations involves an official public comment period, and that's not what this is. That period comes after regulations are on their way to being finalized. What we're sharing with the public today are areas where we believe changes to regulations are necessary, so that you can help shape our thinking about what those changes should be. The packages we're going to talk about today are not a comprehensive list of the areas in which we're working on regulations. If you're interested in that information, the best source of that would be our advisory committee meetings, which happen quarterly. The next one is on February 23rd. Meetings of this sort, this kind of early input meetings, have not been typical for the Bureau to date. So this is a bit of a trial for us. I think depending on how it goes and how productive it is, we may add meetings of this type to kind of our regular circulation of meetings or opportunities to get feedback from stakeholders. Because the goal of the meeting is to hear from the public, we are starting this discussion, kicking off our discussion without, imposing strict time limits on how long each public comment can be. Those of you who have signed into some of our advisory committee meetings know that those time limits are often strictly monitored. We're not starting the meeting with such time limits here today, but depending on how the meeting goes, we may impose limits as needed to keep the meeting productive and on schedule as we go forward. So with that as a welcome, I'm going to kick it off to Ebony Santee, who is the Bureau's licensing chief. She will outline and moderate a discussion about the newly changed definition of educational program pursuant to SB 802.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. As Debbie said, I will be leading a discussion regarding Senate Bill 802, which as of January 1st has changed the definition of educational programs to exclude programs that are 32 hours or less of instruction and do not lead to employment. Hopefully most of you have seen the memorandum from January 20th. That is a discussion draft, and I will be going over each of those questions that were posed in that document. After each of those questions, I will offer up some time for feedback or questions or comments, which will be noted. So the first question is, may an institution voluntarily opt into program approval for these short-term programs that do not lead to employment? No, unlike institutional exemptions, SB 802 specifically excludes programs that are short-term and non-employment. So we don't have the authority to approve these programs. The Bureau seeks, of course, your input today on whether institutions offering excluded programs would value any type of process which may be formally verified any of these excluded short-term programs that did not lead to employment. So again, the question is, would it be of any value to institutions who are here today if we had some type of formal verification process for these excluded programs? And I believe that you can use the chat feature to either raise your hand or ask the question to be called on in the box.
Did you wish to open this for public comment right now?
Yes, please.
All right, so I'm going to open up the WebEx Q&A feature, and that will allow you to find the Q&A box and type the word comment into the comment box and hit send. That way we will know that you are requesting to make a comment, and then we will take comments in the order the request was received, and I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone at that time. So if you do have a comment at this time, look for the question mark inside a box icon at the lower right corner of your screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. Type the word comment and hit send, and we'll get to you in order. And I do not see any requests for comment at this time. Would you like me to leave that open or close it for now?
Whatever works best for you. I'm going to allow people to ask questions after each section. So,
Okay, I'll leave it open at this point. So if anyone has a question that comes to mind, go ahead and write the word comment in that Q&A box and hit send, and we will get to you.
thank you. So the second question was, what rights and protections will be afforded to students enrolling in these excluded programs? Currently, of course, the rights afforded to students that are enrolled in approved educational programs at approved institutions can include refund rights in the case of a withdrawal, program cancellation, school closure, or financial restitution through our Student Tuition Recovery Fund in the case of economic loss. There's also access to complaint handling procedures if a school is engaged in any type of wrongdoing. Currently, the Bureau's laws and regulations pertaining to these and other protections would not extend to students who are enrolled in educational programs as defined in SB 802. The Bureau has no ability to collect STRIF assessments for students enrolled in program offerings that do not count as educational programs. So again, those rights would not be afforded to students in these programs that were excluded from the approved programs list. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions about that.
And as a reminder to the public, if you do not have the ability to type in the comment or find the Q&A, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 if you are a call-in user, or using the hand raised feature if you are using the mobile app. And we do have a question from someone representing as Angela Perry. Angela, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can make your comment.
Sorry, I did not get my question submitted early enough, and my thought is on the last section about a voluntary program or some sort of verification of the excluded programs. And I was just going to say, I know that the question is framed as whether it would be useful for institutions. I think that from a consumer protection standpoint, it would be valuable to verify those exceptions or exemptions as a matter of course. I think that any exemption or self-verified exemption always comes with some level of bias or question in sort of terms of consumer protection. So just a thought that it might be helpful to have some sort of verification process, if only to collect more data on what kinds of programs are offered, what does the Bureau cover, what kind of programs are exempt, how many programs are exempt. That would all be valuable data to have and valuable information for the Bureau to have potentially. So I know that that question was framed as whether it would be useful for institutions. I think that it would be useful for other applications as well. So just wanted to chime in to share that. And also, as long as I have a moment, just to say how much I appreciate the Bureau taking the time to go through this, to very proactively and transparently put forward all of these proposals. That is so wonderful and refreshing, and just such a wonderful thing for the Bureau to be doing. So just really want to express appreciation for that, and appreciation for this opportunity. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And definitely your comment will be noted. And I'm glad we're here to help.
And I do not see any other requests for public comment at this time.
Great. So in connection to the previous statement, the question was, will institutions need to pay STRIF assessment, or will you need to complete a school performance fact sheet for any of these excluded programs? And the answer is no. If a program is excluded, STRIF and the school performance fact sheets do not apply. Don't think there's any or should be any comment on that, so I'm going to move forward. The question is, may an institution include excluded programs in the catalog? So as the Bureau would not oversee these short-term programs that did not lead to employment, we're unable to govern how you advertise these, whether it's in your catalog or website, or whatever mechanisms you do use. We are invested, of course, in ensuring that institutions are not making any false or misleading claims. And we want you to know that if you do include both types of programs in your advertising, that you are very clear and make statements that differentiate between the approved and excluded programs. It is okay to have separate catalogs. We just want you to be aware and make sure that you are avoiding making any false or misleading claims. And it looks like we may have a question. And if anyone else has any, please feel free.
I do not see a question. Does someone have a hand up?
I believe there's one in the comments from Margaret Ryder, one of our advisors.
Yes. Okay, that might have been sent privately. I'm not sure. Anyways, Margaret, yes. Let me go ahead and send you a request to unmute your microphone, and then you will have time to make your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I put my question in the comments section. Sorry about that, but I'm just wondering if there's any courses or programs in the under 32 units that are receiving federal funding in grants or loans, and if so, how that would impact the federal requirement for state complaint handling for programs.
Thank you, Margaret, for your question. And I may have some other staff jump in there. Oh, there's Debbie. Want to take this one?
Thanks. I don't think that should be an issue. Would be interested in hearing any institutions' thoughts on this, but because, at least with respect to Title IV financial aid grants and loans from the Department of Education, because of the minimum program lengths in those programs, typically about 4 months. They typically have a 4-month or longer time frame for Title IV eligibility. So that would be, that's what it's a great question, and we will we'll double check that. But that's our current understanding.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Any hands up?
I don't see any either.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as I've said before, the programs that will be excluded are 32 hours or less of instruction, and they do not lead to employment. So the question has come up, how will the Bureau determine which programs lead to employment? We will obviously need to pass regulations outlining which programs are deemed and designed to lead to employment. And we are looking for feedback at this time on which categories would be considered leading to employment. And this list of programs could include recipients of federal funding through the Workforce and Innovation Opportunity Act, the inclusion of educational training provider list for the Employment Development Department, programs that are advertised as leading to employment or a career, programs that enable entry into a new profession or field, and in part a set of short-term programs that collectively lead to employment, or any of those designed to prepare graduates for licensure in a specific professional field. So these are a short list of areas where we believe that programs that fall into this area would be considered leading to employment. But again, we're opening it up to comment or any questions in this area.
And as a reminder to call-in users, if you would like to raise your hand, you can hit *3. Otherwise, the Q&A option is available behind the question mark inside a box, and type the word comment in the text box and hit send. But at this point, I do not see any raised hands or comments.
Nor do I. So I will
Thank you.
move forward. So the question, of course, is when will this change go into effect? Obviously, it was passed effective January 1, 2022. However, we will need to pass regulations again to determine which programs lead to employment. At this time, institutions should exclude programs in the licensing applications if they are 32 hours or less, and they believe that they do not lead to employment. Soon, the Bureau will go through all of the approved institution records to show any approved programs that are 32 hours or less and request feedback and information from the institution if they lead to employment. If programs are identified as not leading to employment, they will be removed from that approved programs list. Once our regulations further articulate the definition of educational program and it's finalized, you will be required to come into compliance with the newly established definitions. So again, if you are turning in applications this point forward, make sure not to include those programs that are 32 hours or less and do not lead to employment. And the Bureau then will be doing their due diligence as well and contacting institutions that we have found programs that potentially meet these requirements, and they will be subsequently removed from the approved programs list. Are there any questions or comments?
I wanted to remind people of how to raise their hand. If you're calling in from your cell phone, you can hit *3. If you're using the WebEx app, if you go behind the 3-dot other options, you'll find the Q&A. And then if you're on a computer and you hover next to your name on the right side in the participant list, you will be able to click the raise hand icon. And at this point, I see a question from someone that's named Jessica. I'm going to go ahead, Jessica, and give you a chance. I'm going to request that you unmute your microphone so that you can ask your question.
My question. I was just wondering, what if the program is less than 32 hours, but it's a prerequisite for another program that does lead to employment?
I can't make a definitive comment on that now, but that's definitely something that we will take into advisement. I will add that to the list of concerns that we're going over before regulations are passed to further define that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would also just like to add if others are thinking of questions like that we should really be grappling with as we think to promulgate some definitions and regulations. Please do chime in, even if you feel like what's here is sufficiently clear in terms of what's presented. If you are thinking about factors that we need to be thinking about, please make sure that they're on our radar.
And I do have a hand raised from Laura Morales. Laura, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can make your comment. And you're unmuted.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My question is in regards to, I know it was previously mentioned that the Bureau will be going through the list of approved programs and reach out to institutions. I'm just wondering if institutions are allowed or will have the option to be able to reach out to someone as a contact at the Bureau if we know we do have programs that are less than 32 hours and meet this new definition. Can we go ahead and do that instead of just waiting, or what is the best thing to do at this point?
I would say at this point, your best option would be to submit a non-substantive request that would be a signed letter notifying us or requesting that these programs be removed. We may ask for additional information, but if you submit that request and include the program that you would like to have removed, we can look into that and potentially take care of that proactively. And that non-substantive request can be sent to the Bureau attention, the licensing unit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then we have a question from Linnea Ray. Linnea, I'm going to send you an unmute request so that you can ask your question. All right, Linnea, I've sent you that request. And you're unmuted. Okay, Linnea, I'm afraid we're not hearing you. I do know that your question has been typed into the Q&A box, so with your permission, I'm going to go ahead and repeat that. Any thoughts about English as a second language? The hours are longer than 32 hours. That was Linnea's question.
Well, I don't want to assume anything about your question, but I do know that recently regulations been passed to redefine, I believe it's 70,000 K with the intensive English language programs, and potentially those can be exempt. But please feel free to reach out to the Bureau, to the licensing unit, even me specifically, so I can get exactly what your question is regarding the ESL courses.
Thank you. And the next question is from someone represented as Vanessa. Vanessa, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can ask your question. And Vanessa, did you get the request to unmute? All right, so that seems like that might be an issue as well. So Vanessa had typed her question, do we still need to have enrollment agreement and SPFS forms made up for program with less than 32 hours that doesn't lead to employment?
You would not, because these would not be regarded as approved programs. So it's excluded, meaning no enrollment agreement, no SPIF, students would not pay STRIF. They would essentially just not be a part of your approved programs list.
Wonderful. Our next question. Oh, Rosa said that her question was answered.
Oh, okay.
I believe that's everything. Angela Perry, I believe, has a question. My apologies. Angela, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can ask your question.
Hello, thank you again so much. I have a little bit of a non sequitur, but as we're talking about exempting these programs from STRIF, I'm wondering if we know how many students are represented by the excluding programs under 32 hours, and what kind of funding loss to STRIF that represents going forwards. As I totally acknowledge that is somewhat of a non sequitur to this discussion, but as we were talking about it, I just thought I would try to put those questions out there just in case somebody knows the answer, and if not, I can definitely follow up.
Yeah, I mean, and if anyone else wants to jump in, that's fine. I'll take a stab. Given that this just passed, I think we'll probably likely gain more information once we do our internal search for programs that are already approved for this 32 hours or less. We would have the ability, obviously, to gather information on the student population that includes. Until we run that search, I wouldn't want to guess to say how many there are students and what that equates to as far as funding wise to the STRIF pot.
Of course, no, that completely makes sense. But just a good question to put out there in the ether. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I do not see any other requests at this time.
Great. Well, that concludes my part of this discussion. Again, I appreciate all of you being here. And as always, if there are questions that come up for you later, feel free to reach out to the Bureau, whether it's through the licensing unit or to myself. My first name is Ebony, E-B-O-N-Y, and my last name, Santee, S-A-N-T-E-E. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
I did get one more question.
Oh.
Franklin Ebliata, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may ask your question.
Ask if
Yes,
how does the cancellation and refund policy work for these excluded programs? Are they going to be treated as the same? Or there's no policy?
No, they would not apply to these
Okay.
programs.
Okay.
Yeah, those cancellation and refund policy, as it is in our law and regulations, apply only to approved programs. And so these programs would be excluded from that.
and I do not see any other questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ebony, and to everyone who chimed in with questions and feedback. So next, we're going to turn it over to Yvette Johnson, who is the Bureau's Administration Chief, to outline the Bureau's efforts to update regulations pertaining to minimum operating standards. Yvette?
Good afternoon. Once again, I'm Yvette Johnson, and I'm going to be facilitating the minimum operating standards portion of this meeting. And for those schools that have been around for a while, you know that the majority of the current minimum operating standards that we have were the ones that came over from the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary and Vocational Education. The Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education is required by statute to adopt by regulation minimum operating standards for private post-secondary institutions. So in 2016, the Bureau reached out to the public to get input regarding the regulations that needed to be updated. And with this feedback that we received, we started the process of revising the minimum operating standards. So you'll see that you have a memo that outlines what these draft regulations that follow the memo, what they're about. And so as we're going over them, just keep in mind that these minimum operating standard regulation changes, they address more clearly requirements for distance education programs. We are trying to ensure that students' educational programs provide the support necessary. We want to mitigate student harm, and we want to provide clarity to streamline compliance and monitoring requirements. You'll see in the meeting packet that the minimum operating standards are quite substantial. For this reason, we want to bring it forward to get input from the public again. So during this, we will cover the various minimum operating standards sections. As we're reviewing it, if you have any comments that you would like to address verbally, just please be sure to follow the instructions that the meeting moderator has provided previously. And if you would like to submit comments in writing, you can send those to the Bureau at our www.bppe.ca.gov address. And when you're corresponding with us, please be sure to put minimum operating standards in the subject line. So as we go through the packet, please note that the proposed changes to existing regulations are in track changes. And if you're looking at a copy of this in color, you'll find those changes noted in red. So what I'll do is I will go through each section, beginning with the section 7000. If you have any comments,
please feel free to raise your hand or to type your comments in the comment box. So as we move forward, we're looking at section 70,000. And so in there, you'll see that we have definitions that we've updated or added to provide clarity. So if you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to state so now or to provide them now.
And this is the moderator. I just wanted to let people know that you can scroll up and down on your computer screen to reach the definitions. The page is displayed, but you're free to scroll up and down as you like. And then Megan Lawrence has asked to make a comment. Megan, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may ask your question. And Megan, if
Okay.
you like,
Yep.
there you go.
Just a quick question. I followed the link at the beginning of the presentation to the meetings page on the BPP website, and I could not find the handouts from today. Is there a location on the website where they're available? I may have missed it or missed an instruction.
If you go to the Bureau's website and there's a calendar of events, if you click on the calendar of events, there's a section that says meeting materials. There's a link. And if you click on that, you'll find them.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we have a request from Ron Zaidman. Ron, I'm going to unmute your microphone so that you can ask your question or comment.
Yes, for us who are offering distance education to students in other states, California is not a member of NC-SARA, which facilitates that. Can you give us any information about if BPPE plans to be a member of NC-SARA in order to facilitate distance education for California schools?
Yvette, if it's all right, I can just chime in quickly on that piece. I think that question of whether the state of California joins the NC-SARA agreement is actually not one that is within the Bureau's purview. So would recommend you direct your questions to your representatives in the legislature.
Thank you.
And Angela Perry, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may make your comment.
Hello. I would just, I don't actually have a comment on the provisions directly in front of us at this moment, but I did want to chime in on the question of distance education. I just wanted to say that the state of California has worked hard over numerous years to create strong consumer protections. And in 2019, in fact, passed stronger consumer protections around online distance education. And that those protections would be undermined and in fact would not be enforceable by the state of California were we to join NC-SARA. So TICAS and other advocates have strongly advocated that the state not join NC-SARA. So just because that came up, I just wanted to chime in. If you are interested and if you don't know about NC-SARA or you would like more information on state authorization, TICAS actually has a whole website that we have just created with tons of materials on state authorization and NC-SARA. So if you just head to ticas.org and check, you can search for state authorization, you'll find our page. And there's tons of information there on the protections specifically that California has created around distance education. So just wanted to chime in completely off topic, and sincere apologies for being completely off topic, but just wanted to chime in to share some resources and some information. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Angela.
And I do not see any requests, any further requests for comment at this time.
And please keep in mind, I do know that there's a lot of information here. So once again, please feel free to send any of your comments to us in writing. And we will take those into consideration.
Great. We did get one more request from Jaime Schrabeck. So I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may make your comment.
Good afternoon. This is Jamie Schrabeck from Precision Nails. As a member of the beauty industry, I want to thank you for including the requirement, as I read it as being suggested, that someone who's teaching in a non-degree educational program would hold the license of the subject that they were teaching. So that would be greatly appreciated if that were a requirement. Thank you.
And our next comment comes from Wendy Cochran. And Wendy, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may make your comment.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. I would like to know what the BPPE is going to do with schools that are continuing, beauty schools, that are continuing to teach their students things that are non-compliant with the regulations to which they will be supervised in when they join their careers as a licensed esthetician cosmetologist. We found that many of these schools are teaching things that are not legal for the students to perform, and there doesn't seem to be any discipline or any correction to this. And so these candidates that go out and get licensed are misinformed that they can actually provide these services that are indeed not legal for them to provide. This seems to be a big problem in the beauty schools, and we'd like to know how the BPPE will address this. Thank you.
And our next comment is from Rebecca Richardson. Rebecca, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can ask your question.
Spell Tikas. I'd like to go to that website and I wasn't sure how to get there.
Yes. Is there someone who can spell Tikas for us?
Hi, Debbie Cochran, Bureau Chief. I can help with that. It is ticas.org. Is the website for the Institute for College Access and Success. And I'll just take a moment also to address the comment that just came up a moment ago. I think if anyone on this call, certainly that individual or any other, believes that an institution is operating outside of the scope of the law or otherwise harming students, we would encourage you to submit a complaint, which can be done on the Bureau's website.
Thank you. And Monica Barboza, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may ask your question. One moment.
I'm not sure if it's been answered already, but will this recording be sent out to everybody to review later?
The recording will not be sent out, but it will be posted to our website for future reference.
All right, and Gabriella Bray, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can ask your question. And Gabriella, I sent you a request.
I believe that my question was already answered. I just wanted to know the spelling of Tikas, but that was already provided.
Wonderful, thank you. And yes, ticas.org, ticas.org. And that is the end of the questions that I see here.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to move on to 71700, Applicability of Standards. Any comments? All right, if there are no comments for that section, the next is 71701, authorization of business entity. This is a new section that's being added.
I do not see any requests for comment, and I do not see any raised hands.
All right. So moving on to the next section, 71705, mission and objectives. Okay, if there are no comments on that section, we're going to move on to 71710, which is educational program.
And
So this is,
I have a question from Robert Johnson. Robert, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may ask your question. And Robert, did you get the request to unmute?
Thank you. Could you move to the last slide? Could you go back one slide, please?
And keep in mind that you can scroll up and down on any given page.
The question boils down to, does the Bureau reserve the right to not approve a school standards when they put those out for their mission? On the mission part of that?
we would want to make sure that whatever the mission of the school is in line with the protection of the students and ensuring that they receive the education that they're.
Yes, but
One
there have been
school for.
instances where Bureau staff have literally disapproved a mission statement by a school. Do you consider that to be appropriate?
If there's a comment you would like to make about the proposed regulations or the existing regulations, we're happy to take it back.
The comment should be that the school has the sole authority to set its mission.
That back, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do not see any other requests for public comment.
Okay, and the next section we're going to is 71710, which is the educational program. Any comments or suggestions on this section? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. And I just want to reiterate, if you are reading through this at a later time and you have any comments or suggestions, please send those in.
We did get one request for comment from Jamie Schrabeck. So Jamie, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you may ask your question.
Thank you, Anne. And now I realize how we're flowing through this document. So apologies for my previous statement. That was jumping the gun a bit. I have a question about these programs like beauty schools. I'm coming from that industry. Again, Jamie from Precision Nails, whereby we have clock hours. Is there a limit to the number of clock hours someone could clock in over a 24-hour period? These are not courses that are structured according to a semester or the typical academic calendar. So I'm curious where in all of this there is some limitation on the number of clock hours someone could log on a particular day. Thank you.
Thank you. And currently, the Bureau does not have any regulations towards that, but if you would like to send in some suggestions or comments, please feel free to. And those can be taken into consideration.
And I do not see any further requests for public comment.
Okay, our next section is 71710.5 syllabi.
And I do see Margaret has you have your hand raised. I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can ask your question.
This is a minor thing on A7, instructional delivery mode or methods. Since the defined delivery mode and defined delivery methods are two different things, shouldn't that be and rather than or?
Thank you, Margaret.
And it appears that's it for public comments right now.
Okay. 71715 instruction. Okay, any questions, comments?
I don't see any requests yet. Oh, no, Margaret, did you have your hand up again? Let's see. I'll go ahead and send you a request to unmute.
Yes, again, a minor kind of thing. It's just a clarification in the revised draft on subsection B. Document the instruction leads to the achievement of each course or educational program. And does that mean that if they have documented that it reaches the goal of a course by course, they can do it that way, or they can have it documented just for the program as a whole? I wasn't quite sure what it meant when it had the or there.
And we have a request for comment from Linda Reekley. Linda, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so you can ask your question. And you're unmuted.
Thank you. I do have a question regarding Section D, the instruction shall be provided in English. Can you expand upon that a little bit more as it relates to providing supplemental support material in other languages and or having translators?
I'm going to ask for some assistance in answering this question. Or we can take your comment and get back to you on it. Normally when a program is approved, it's approved for a specific language. And if it is approved to be taught in Spanish, then that's what how it should be. I mean, if it's approved to be taught in English, that's what it should be taught in. And I see Debbie's on.
Thank you. If there is a specific type of situation that you feel is unclear, could you just say a little bit more about that? What that is? We'll have to take it back and just make sure that we are being as clear as possible. But it would be helpful if you could say a little bit more about the situation you're thinking through.
Probably best if I put this in email and think through it a little bit more clearly so that I can be a little more concise with my question and therefore allow you to give clear answers. So I will write that out and email it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. And Ron Zaidman, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can ask your question.
Thank you. My question is, Ms. Yvette mentioned a website where we can get information about NC SARA and state authorizations. If she could either text to us or tell us or spell out which website that is, we'd appreciate that.
I believe that was through Angela Perry, and it was TICAS, T as in Tom, I, C as in Charles, A as in Adam, .org.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. TICAS.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
.org.
forgot this. Yes.
Okay.
And that's it for the moment on public requests for public comment. And Laura, Laura Morales has her hand up. Laura, I'm sending you a request to unmute.
I'd like to ask for clarification on 71715 instruction G. The ratio of students to faculty shall be appropriate. Does the Bureau have a definition of what is considered appropriate, or is that does the institution is allowed to come up with a student to faculty ratio on a specific program?
We do not currently have any specifics on that. And if that's something that you would like to propose to add to the regulations, or if anyone would like to propose any information, then please send that in to us.
And we have a request to comment from Margaret Ryder. Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
On 71715G, the last sentence or second to last sentence says the ratio of students to faculty in a competency-based program, course or instruction or lesson shall allow and so forth. I don't think competency-based program is defined anywhere, and that might be useful to define it. And then a course of instruction is a defined thing, but I don't think lesson is, and I just wondered whether it made sense to include lesson here, or if it does make sense to include it, whether that needs to be defined, and also again, why it's or rather than and. Thanks. Oh, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay, and our next request to speak has come from Carol Dykehouse. Carol, I've sent you a request to unmute.
I have a question about the instruction provided in English. The lady spoke earlier and you asked her for a specific situation. We have a medical assisting program, but our advisory board committee members keep advising us to either provide or teach our students, because a large portion of our student body, as well as our demographic, is Hispanic, that they should learn those phrases and terminology for medical issues in Spanish. We have a laminated card that translates them. Is it acceptable to hand them those, or is that not allowed? We're not actually teaching them. The instructor, as far as I know, only speaks English. Is that acceptable?
Okay. And my apologies, Margaret, is your hand still up from before, or did you have a new request? Okay, thank you. And I do not see any other requests for public comment. My apologies, Linnea Ray. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can make your comment. And Linnea, I see that you are unmuted, but I'm not hearing your voice. So at this point, I will read the question that you typed in. The last few questions are related to most accreditation standards, such as mission, student learning outcomes, competency-based instruction, etc. I believe the Board of Nursing and CDPH licensing units do also have regs. So that was Linnea's comment. And I do not see any further requests at this time.
Thank you, Linnea. All right, so our next section is 71716, which is distance education. All right, are there any comments or suggestions for this section?
Not that I see at this time. Again, if you are a call-in user, you can use *3 to raise your hand. And if you are using the mobile app on a mobile device, the Q&A should be behind the 3-dot other options. And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute. Okay, Laura, you're unmuted.
Yes, I would like to comment on that section, and I'm not able to scroll back up where it in the regulation where it talks about qualification of the faculty. I'm wondering if the Bureau has considered any alignment for those institutions that offer truck driving programs, any alignment of qualifications for faculty according to the Department of Transportation, especially with the new requirement that is coming up next month.
We will take that back and look at it. Thank you.
And I do not see any other requests at this time. And David Sellers, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you may make your comment.
At the very top of this section, it looked like it said that telecommunication is required for distance education. Is that required for all distance education programs, or is there a separate section for asynchronous distance education programs?
Don't believe there is a separate section for that particularly. We'll look at that. And if you would like to send us your thoughts in writing, that would be very helpful. Our next section, 71717 satellite locations. Okay. Seeing that there are no comments, I'm going to move on to 71720, general requirements for all faculty. And I know we received a couple of comments on this section already. So thank you.
And Jessica, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you may make your comment.
Hi, I was just wondering if the Bureau could elaborate more on the differences between a branch and a satellite.
And I was trying to pull up my laws and regulations real quick. But a satellite location is pretty much a location where nothing but teaching is done. There are no administrative records or anything are held at that location. It's strictly an off-site location where where instruction is held. A branch is a location that can do pretty much anything that the main location can do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Megan Lawrence, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can make your comment.
Hello, this is Megan Lawrence. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. My comment is around the language for the academic freedom policy. The language uses the term latitude, and I just want to note we're a regionally accredited institution, and our regional accreditor defines academic freedom as the faculty's ability to share convictions and responsible conclusions. I suspect by use of the term latitude, what the BPPE is intending is deviation from a set or published curriculum. So do I, as a faculty member, have the right to write my own tests, or do I have to use the ones that are handed to me? If that is your intention, I just wanted to recommend the language be a little more precise so that those of us coming from the regional accreditation framework don't misinterpret it.
Thank you for that. Okay. If there are no more comments, I'm going to move on to section 71720.1, which is faculty teaching degree programs. Okay, no comments on that one.
Not that I see.
Okay, we're going to move on to 71720.2, which is faculty teaching non-degree programs.
And Megan Lawrence, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can ask your question.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. There's a statement here that if you're teaching in the non-degree programs, that you hold the license or certification. We do have some non-degree programs based on academic credits, and some of them have general education components to them. So this, as it's written, would disallow us from getting, say, someone with a master's degree in communication from teaching communication in a licensed radiography program, for example. So if that's your intention, that's your intention. But if there's leeway for the general education and the soft skills, regulation around that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Here, next section, 71720.3, faculty teaching distance education programs. Okay. Hearing and seeing no comments for this one, I'm going to move on to 71730, which is the administration. Suggestions?
And yes, Margaret Ryder, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
All right, on A, we violate any provision of the Act or this chapter, etc. I think it should be a provision of the Act or its predecessor.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up, Margaret.
I'm sorry, I said it should include violated any provision of the Act or its predecessor Act, or you can name the predecessor Act.
And Margaret, shall I lower your hand for you? Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
I see no further requests for comment.
Okay. To 71735, facilities and educational materials.
And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Regards the qualification of other staff to assist the chief academic officer, there is a section saying that the CAO is primarily responsible for the faculty and the program. So just for clarification, so other managers, other staff can supervise the faculty, correct? Or does that make it not possible?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the end of your question.
Okay, so I would like to know if other staff were managers, supervisors, if they are allowed to supervise faculty. It's just because the regulation is saying that the chief academic officer is primarily responsible for faculty. So I just would like to get some clarification of that, just to make sure that other administrators are able to or are allowed to, per the regulation, to supervise faculty. So it's a supervision component that I would like to get clarification whether or not faculty have to be supervised directly by the CAO, or can other staff do that?
You're still going to have your structure within your school, and this is not limiting you to just the chief academic officer.
Right, because we know that the academic officer is primarily responsible, but what I'm saying is if other managers, supervisors are responsible for direct supervision of the faculty, oh, you know what? I would just
Yes.
put it in
Yeah, put it in writing.
a question. How about that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it's not limiting your faculty and the supervisors.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, and Margaret Ryder, I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
I'm sorry, are we on 71735?
Yes.
In subsection B is in boy, the language shall not be obsolete. I think it would be helpful if that could be spelled out more, so that it was clearer what that meant, so it would be easier to enforce. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to section 71740, library and other learning resources. Okay. 71745, financial resources. Okay. Our next section, 71746, which is a new addition. It's the collection of tuition and payment from students.
And Margaret Ryder, I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
in A, I thought it was a little unclear. It says that you should not charge students an amount that exceeds the amount listed regardless of the source of the tuition. And I was thinking that someone might possibly interpret it as saying, well, you can't charge the student more than what's listed in the catalog, but if the money is, but you could charge someone else who may be providing some of the tuition. And I don't think that's what you meant, and I may just not be understanding it. But I thought maybe that could be clarified a little bit. Thank you.
And Catherine, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so you can ask your question.
This is Catherine Aquino from NCNA. I have a comment on number 2. It's on the refund of 100% of the amount paid for institutional charges less a reasonable deposits not to exceed $250. So that is kind of confusing. So if that could just be clarified a little bit, that would be great.
Okay, you're speaking of 717502?
Correct. Correct. Okay. There's $100 there, and there's also 100% and a $250. It's yeah, it's, if that could be clarified, that would be great.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to 71751, withdrawals and refunds.
And Margaret Ryder, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Yes, thank you. On A1, D, and E, I don't know statutorily if you can do this, but it seems to me it would be helpful if you required those methods of delivery that they're included in the policy, and the person to whom it should be delivered be reasonable, so that you don't have, something where they can only deliver that by email when they know they have students who don't have email, or they only can do it by telephone and the telephone is never answered, things like that. And likewise, the person to whom it's delivered. And then in F, and again, I haven't checked back to see if this is statutory, but it seems to me that typically in consumer statutes, notices from the consumer are effective when, in essence, placed in the U.S. postal mail or similar type delivery from the students, rather than when it's received, because the student has no way of knowing when it was received, and sometimes things aren't received. So unless it's prohibited statutorily, I think it should be that should be changed. Thanks.
Okay. So you're speaking more of a postmark date as opposed to receipt date.
For if it's by mail, but if it's by email, when the student sends it to the correct email address, what, I don't know exactly how to do it in a few words, but basically so that it's when the student has put it in process in a way that should reach the school.
Okay. Thank you.
And Jessica, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can make your comment.
I was just saying, I agree about the postmarked date, because a lot of times the students will say that they didn't get something when you know that you sent it. So it just kind of depends on who bears the burden. Is it the school to prove that they sent it, or the student to prove that they received it? So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. The next section is 71752, completion document. Is a new addition.
And Jamie Schrabeck, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Jamie Schrabeck from Precision Nails here again. The Board of Barbering and Cosmetology relies solely on proofs of training for admission to an exam. And trusting these documents has put us into the position of essentially endorsing fraud, which is most unfortunate because we have situations where we don't have any idea at what point the person enrolled in the program. There's no registration of the students to start with. So if someone submits proof of training, having only attended at school for a couple of months for a program that's meant to take 10, how would we know? So I wish there were some mechanism built into this whereby courses that are meant to be a particular length of time, those agencies could be notified at the point of registration that that student is in the system, so that when the proof of training comes at the end, we can realize that yes, that person has spent an adequate amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Margaret. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think I got unmuted for this purpose. I'm sorry, I'm one section behind. 71751 D is in David. It says these must be kept current on an ongoing basis. And it used to say on a monthly basis. I think it would be helpful to be clearer in what is meant by an ongoing basis. Does that mean, within the same day that this happened, or what does that mean exactly? Thanks.
Yeah. Great. And we're moving on to 71760, self-monitoring and institutional effectiveness.
And Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. On section A2, it requires attendance at an informational workshop, but it doesn't have any time frame. So it could be that, the last time anybody attended one was 10 years ago. And I assume that you really mean on some more of an ongoing basis, but it might be helpful to give some clarity as to that. And then on B, subsection B, institutional demonstrate that it considers student feedback, so forth and so on. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be helpful here to have some explanation of how they are supposed to demonstrate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, we're going to move on to section 71770, admission standards.
And Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
In subdivision C, it requires that a written copy of the requirements is provided to students, but there is no indication that that has to be done in some fashion that is prominent so that they would actually see it rather than just in a stack of papers. I think it would be helpful to add something requiring it to be clear, conspicuous, and prominent, or give some indications of the actual size, type, or color, or something that makes it appear prominent so students would see it.
Thank you. Moving on to 71771, transfer of credit policy.
And Margaret, I'm going to send a request to unmute.
I'm wondering in A2, if it's necessary to say the institution shall follow a written, systematic, consistent transfer of credit policy. In other words, specifying that it be in writing, or whether that's, you think that's unnecessary.
Thank you.
And Megan Lawrence, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. One moment.
Hello, hello, this is Megan. I have two comments. One's on Section 3 about the acceptance of transfer credit aligning to the competencies or educational objectives. This may be more applicable to the enforcement, but I hope the final wording of this section allows for the transfer credit of GE in similar disciplines that may not be exactly equivalent to what the institution offers. So for example, if we require a social science GE requirement, we offer a psychology course, we should be able to transfer in sociology because that's also a social science course. Just a comment there. Also on Section 5, where it's limiting the number of credits that can be transferred in, some of our programs are degree completion programs, so students complete essentially 90 quarter credits, an associate degree, usually community college institutions, and then 90 quarter credits with us. As I read this, I don't know how to apply this to that situation. So just want to make that note. I'm assuming you don't intend to eliminate all degree completion programs in California.
Thank you for your comment. All right. If there are no others, we're going to move on to 71775, which is pre-enrollment disclosure and notice to prospective degree program students.
And Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
In this section, several places it talks about providing a total refund. And I think that's where the term used has been full refund. And I also wonder if it's necessary here to tie this back to the fact that in certain circumstances, they would not get a refund for their STRIF payment, just to make that clear here. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go on to section 71775, pre-enrollment disclosure notice to prospective degree programs. I'm sorry, 0.5. Pre-enrollment disclosure notice to prospective degree program students, institutions with existing approvals to operate. Let's see.
And
it looks like we have that listed twice. So feel free to go ahead and provide your comment and we will look at them in.
Okay, Margaret, I've sent you a request to unmute.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't, this should be the same in the prior section, or maybe that is a duplicate, but in any event, in C, I was having trouble following this. The notice should also be posted immediately preceding or following what? It just, maybe it's just me, I'm not understanding that as to could it pertain to the description of the program. I'm assuming it's preceding or following the degree program as you're setting forth below, but I had trouble understanding that.
Okay. All right, so we will definitely take a look at that. Our next section is the enrollment agreement, 71800.
And Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
Yes, this is in F2. Registration, application, admission fee for or deposit, which may be designated as non-refundable. I mean, certain of those things are non-refundable unless X, or unless the institution decides they're not going to require the students to pay that regardless. So it's not clear, maybe designated under what circumstances. I'm not quite understanding that.
And I'm going to send Catherine a request to unmute your microphone so you may make your comment.
Thank you. My question, or I need to clarify letter D. So that is on date by which the student must exercise his or her right to cancel, expressed by the section or code as expressed as a specific calendar date. So do you mean that we have to indicate a specific date for each student we enroll, the date or the last day that they have the right to cancel? Because I'm thinking here, students enroll in different dates, or they have they sign the enrollment agreement in different dates. So do you expect us to also have that adjusted or have that written according to the time frame that they sign the enrollment agreement, which would be different for each enrollment agreement?
Want to know what is specific for each student. So I'm not sure I'm not sure exactly what your question is, because each student would be different. So
Okay.
yes, there would be an expectation that.
Okay. All right. So we just have to include that in the enrollment agreement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
I was just wanted to comment on that previous comment about the period of the enrollment agreement, which was one of my questions as I was going through the review of my enrollment agreement here for our institution. So yes, and that's where I was told that it had to have the enrollment agreement itself, regardless of the program, it has to have a specific date. So I just wanted to comment on that. And my other question, it's in regard to the cost of the program. That will be number one. 71800 item 1. For actually item 2, I'm sorry. So for this, for the different sections here, is the SDRF just not listed, or is that part of the of the application or admission fee mentioned in 2?
If you go down to all the way down to number 11, that's where the student tuition recovery fee is mentioned.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at 11. That's probably why.
Yes. So if you go down, if you scroll down the list, you'll see the different fees.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Michael Gadua, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can make your comment. And Michael, you are unmuted.
I believe the comment I had was just regarding the date, cancellation date, but I think that's going to be answered later upon your responses to our comments here. The reason why I bring that because I know that for the 7 days doesn't start running until the first day of class, and that's the cancellation date. It's always going to be the 7th day from the first day of class, but that's just my comment, and we'll see what the official response is. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's see, Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
Sorry, I forgot to mention also in subdivision I, the last line, a statement that the current fees and so forth are listed in the catalog. I think it would be helpful to say a statement specifying where in the catalog the current fees, so forth, are listed.
And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have a question this time.
Okay, I'll lower your hand for you. Thank you.
If there are no more questions or comments, we're going to move on to section 71810, which is the catalog. And I know it's a lot. So once again, please feel free, if you're reviewing this later, you have any comments or suggestions, please write those into us.
And Margaret, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
The section, I guess it is sections A1 and 2 talk about updates to the catalog. And this kind of reminds me of when you get a privacy notice that says, and we can change it at any time, but we don't have to tell you. And so I'm thinking it would be helpful here if there were some explanation of if there are changes to the catalog, what the school has to do to let students know if it's something that's not like on an annual basis, if it's something that happens more frequently, and whether it's a kind of a major change or minor change. Thanks.
Okay, our next section is 71820, which is institutional website requirements.
And Margaret, I'll send you a request to unmute.
I am very concerned that with website requirements, unless they specify either how or where or using language such as prominent, contrasting colors, easily readable, some language, clear and conspicuous often is not really, or sometimes interpreted as just as clear and conspicuous as everything else on the website, so it really doesn't stick out. And so I think there needs to be some work done to make sure that these things are really obvious and prominent on the website and include that language here. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Regards to item C, an institution shall not advertise on its website educational programs that are not approved. I would like to, for some consideration, as some of those programs that may not be approved by the Bureau, however, they are offered by the institution and they could be academic programs or other programs with a new definition of 32 hours or less, not leading to employment. For institutions in that category, our website, it's a way to advertise these other programs and recruit. So I would like consideration for that.
All right, thank you.
And Margaret, I'll send you another request to unmute your microphone. And Laura, shall I lower your hand?
I just want to follow up on what I guess was Laura just said. I mean, another way to handle this might be to not prohibit it, but to make sure that if it is going to be on their website, it is somehow boxed off separate from everything else and with clear information that it's not approved. It doesn't have to be approved, isn't approved. There's no requirements for refunds, STRIF, etc. Somehow, so that if they want, they can still tell people we have these programs, but so that those programs, students don't get confused about them. And I realize that may be hard to do, but that might be another way to handle it.
Thank you, Margaret.
And Laura, I just want to make sure that you didn't have anything to add.
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, that brings us to the end of the minimum operating standards. Appreciate your patience in going through that and providing your input. And
we did get one more comment. My apologies, from Jessica. One quick second while I go ahead and send Jessica an unmute request so she can make her comment.
Yeah, I was just in agreement with Margaret's idea. I think, for those programs that are under 32 hours, maybe having them labeled as a workshop and having some documentation on that would be helpful.
Yeah. So once again, if you have any questions, any comments, any other thoughts that you'd like to provide us, please send it to our main email address at www.bppe.ca.gov and with the subject heading of minimum operating standards. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
One moment, Luis had a question. When do these new regulations go into effect?
These are just proposed regulations, which is why we have the meeting to get input from the public as to any thoughts they may have in helping us develop the regulations. So they're still in the development phase.
And Elizabeth Price has a quick question, and let me go ahead and send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can ask that.
I was wondering if you could talk us through what the rest of the development phase will be, or what it will look like.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So we'll take everything that the comments that you've given us into consideration. We'll go back and look through them. More likely than not, we'll go through the advisory committee. They'll be presented at our advisory committee. And then we'll go through the process of submitting them through the Office of Administrative Law. There will be a comment period again once they've been developed. There'll be a 45-day comment period where we can get more, if there are any questions or any more comments about the regulations, and then they'll be moved on to the Office of Administrative Law for approval. And once they've been once they've been approved by the Office of Administrative Law, they will be put out for everyone. They'll be adopted and become effective. That's a simplified version of it.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for walking us through this package and all the work that has gone into this this package since 2016. I think it's been a long time coming, but I know that a lot of the impetus for some of these updates were actually changes that institutions themselves were interested in seeing back a few years ago. So really excited to be able to help clear the decks and move some of these straightforward changes forward. So, you know, the last component of this meeting is really just to hear more from you about what issues you think might be on our radar. We wanted to, you know, obviously we shared with you what has been on our radar already, but you may have other things that you are looking to see in terms of potential regulatory changes. You know, I think before opening up for comment, I would just, of course, add a reminder that the goal of regulations is to implement the laws as established by the legislature. So interpretation of those and how to operationalize them. Hard word. But we don't, you know, we do not set the laws. That's the legislature's job. So if there are places where you think our regulations could be clearer or more straightforward or improved in any other fashion, we welcome that feedback. And with that, please chime in if there's things you think we should be looking at, you know, whether it's statutory or regulatory. If you aren't sure, we'll take it back and we'll take a look.
And Michael Gadua has some feedback for you. One moment while I do not see him in the attendee list any longer. He may have taken off, but his comment was, "Thank you, good stuff." And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so you can make your comment.
Open consideration for the oversight of the Bureau for the ESL programs, also the citizenship programs, with which there are two separate programs, and in particular to those programs that do not have a cost for the student. And if there could be some more specific information or how is that a free program where we're actually trying to help a student obtain skills that are going to help them to be successful, you know, having this to fulfill all these requirements that as a consumer it's not really a benefit to the student but more of a barrier. So thank you.
And Jamie Schrabeck, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have time to make your comment.
Thank you again for this opportunity to interact with your agency. Going back to the beauty schools again, as far as the website requirements go, it would be helpful if when a school has to be approved by the BPPE, that there would be a requirement that a link to the BPPE's database were available or required actually on the website that would then give anyone who is a prospective student the opportunity to follow up and make sure that in fact that school does have the required approval, and that it's not on probationary status. It's most frustrating to deal with students who are just now finding out that the horrible experience they're having in school might have been prevented altogether had they known more about the school before they enrolled. Thank you.
And Jessica, I'm going to go ahead and send you a request to unmute so that you can give your input.
Hi, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk with us. I know my partner and I always say we wish that there was a school for how to run a school, or more books and things to help us figure out these waters, because it can be very complicated. And we're very busy trying to run the school, but also trying to figure out like how to interpret what you guys are saying in a lot of the publications can be hard for us. And I have a college degree, like I can understand everything pretty well, but I feel like we almost need a translator to translate the documents for us so we can figure out what you guys want. So I don't know, it just seems like there's a huge amount of stuff that we need to learn and need to do to make sure that we're meeting requirements, but it's just as much work to figure out what you guys want. So but I am grateful that you guys do take the time to answer our questions. And I know I've probably asked a lot of questions to your guys' staff, and I apologize, but I just want you guys to know that I appreciate you and all the help that you do give us.
Thank you for that. I do appreciate that. And I think I'm glad you are reaching out to the staff when you do have questions. I think if you if there are specific areas where you think we could be clearer, I certainly know we would welcome that feedback. The reason why we provide those the documents we do provide is to be clear and helpful. So if it's not actually achieving those goals, that's important feedback for us to know. And I will also just say I know that the team, both in licensing and compliance, have been working to make sure that we're back to regular workshops. The compliance workshop has recently been revamped, so certainly encourage you to check that out if you haven't already.
And Cassandra, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can ask your question.
I was curious as to if we had any proposed guidance for with the new law of the removal of the ATB and the admission standards, or are we still in process with that?
We did put out, in addition to the memos that we discussed today, we last week also put out a memo with a broader array of new laws and interpretation of those laws. So that one did address SB 607 and the removal of the ATB requirement. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. If folks have not seen that memo already.
Thanks.
But
And Angela Perry, I'm going to send you a request to unmute so that you can make your comment.
Hello, thank you so much for that. And my comment is really just a desire to express appreciation for this process. This is, as I said earlier, just a huge step in the right direction. We are so pleased to see the Bureau share this very publicly, solicit feedback. I apologize that I haven't had a ton of direct feedback, especially on proposed language. We will definitely get you notes and thoughts as soon as we can on those, but really and truly just want to express appreciation for this opportunity to not only give feedback to the Bureau, but have a few questions answered. And really the transparency of this process is so invaluable and so appreciated. So just really want to express sincere appreciation for that, and the promise that we will get you some feedback and some notes as soon as we can, and we'll make sure that we get those directed to you if we have any direct feedback on anything that we weren't able to express today. But again, just really want to thank the Bureau and all of the wonderful staff that have been so helpful in sharing these updates today. And thank you for all of the memos and the public materials that have been shared recently. It is so helpful to sort of have all of that information out there, especially as we sort of go into the sunset review process, which I know is on everybody's mind. So thank you so much. And if there are ways that TICAS or other advocates can be helpful, we would certainly be open to those opportunities. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's, again, very helpful feedback to know that it is, that the memos have been useful. And again, if there's areas where they're not clear, please do follow up and let us know. I think that I was thinking I could send something in the chat or in the Q&A, and it looks like that what the functionality I thought was there isn't there. So if folks just go to the BPPE website, bppe.ca.gov, and at the top of the very top of the webpage, the top item, again, very, very top, it'll say Memo on Implementation of Laws Effective January 1, 2022. And that's where you can see information on implementation of not just SB 802, but also SB 607, 803, and AB 70. So some more information about all those bills are in there. And also, you know, to anyone who does have feedback, additional feedback beyond this meeting, that they want to submit after they have a little bit more time with the documents, please do feel free to email us. You can email us at bppe@dca.ca.gov. That's our general inbox, and we'll route the feedback accordingly.
Okay, and we do have one more comment from Jessica. So Jessica, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, me again. I know BPPE, one of the things that you guys do is you're here to support us with the running of our schools. I don't know if this would fall under you guys or if this is me just wishing out loud, wishful thinking. But any opportunities for like additional workshops or continuing education on things like how to resolve student issues like attendance, behavioral, things like that. I know that we would really love something like that, or even just opportunities to meet other people who are also running schools, just so we could have additional support when we have questions and things like that. I would love that. But like I said, wishful thinking.
Well, thanks so much, Jessica. I will say we're definitely always trying to think about what we can do to be helpful. I know that, you know, we have, in addition to the licensing and compliance workshops that we have, that I just mentioned earlier, we have ones on school performance fact sheets and are working on one that's specific to annual reports more broadly. So definitely looking for ways to help as much as we can.
And Ron Zademan, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can make your comment.
Thank you. Our university has worked with BPPE for many years, and we really must congratulate you on the sophistication and professionalism that you reflect now. It's really greatly appreciated. My comment would be that I hope that the leadership of the BPPE continues to do what it's been doing, but also add an item, how can we simplify our regulations? Because as a school, you know, we have many regulators coming to us, and I don't know if regulation is now considered an industry in the US, but from our experiences, we have to devote more and more resources to meeting these regulations. And we appreciate the regulation because they definitely guide the quality and security of our education. So we appreciate it. But we would appreciate if BPPE and other regulators can look at how can we simplify this so that it is less work for both yourself and for the schools. Thank you.
I definitely appreciate that sentiment, and I think that's another one. If you see places where there are conflicts or tensions between the Bureau's regulations and other regulators' regulations, please do pass that along to us. That is something that we certainly want to avoid.
And Laura Morales, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
I promise this will be my last question. I do want to get clarification in regards to Senate Bill 607. So as since the effective date is January 1st, are institutions okay to go ahead and make the necessary changes in the school catalog and other documents as appropriate and start implementing the new regulation?
Yes, as you noted, the law was in effect as of January 1st. So for any students newly enrolling in programs or any of the associated documents, those rules all changed effective January 1st.
Thank you. I also want to express my gratitude to all of you for putting this together. I know I am always in contact with licensing, compliance, and the annual report staff. I would like to give a huge shout out to them because of the feedback. They're always there. Even if it takes some time, they always get back, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for the positive feedback. I know the team really appreciates it. I don't know that I see any other comments or questions.
I don't see anything else.
Okay, well, I think this has been a wonderful success from my opinion. I know we've got tons and tons of great feedback from the discussion. I know that there were also lots of other suggestions that came up in the through the Q&A feature. So we're taking those back as well. Just really want to thank you all. And again, to reiterate the process, this is the first time you're seeing some of the language that we've talked about, but it certainly won't be the last. We would anticipate you probably seeing it twice more. In terms of, both at our advisory committee meeting, the next one will be February 23rd. And then of course, when there's that official public comment period. So again, any further comments or questions that come in after this, bppe@dca.ca.gov. I did see a question that just came through again about just update on STRIF. What I will flag that we will have an update going out to institutions this week about STRIF assessments. That was something that we discussed at some length at our last advisory committee meeting, and the status of the STRIF fund and the need to increase those assessments. So official word will be going out later this week, and that will go into effect April 1 of 2022. So plenty of time, but you'll hear more about that later this week. Thank you all so much for your time, and thanks to the whole Bureau team for helping pull this off. And we'll see you February 23rd at the advisory committee meeting.
Thank you, and we will be ending the event.